I was born in Okemah, Oklahoma, January the 7th, 1937. My dad owned the trucking lines that run from Oklahoma City to Muskogee, and my mom was a housewife and mother. I had one brother, 7 years older than me. They neither one had ever been on a horse in their life. It's strange that I was born with this desire of what I had to do with my life, because I must have got it from my grandpa, because if you've ever seen Rooster Cogburn, that was him. He was a sheriff out of Fort Smith, and he went to the southeastern Oklahoma hills and got the robbers. So I guess it jumped a generation and come from him to me. When I was one and a half, I was very sick, and the doctors, my mom took me to Tulsa to a specialist, and he sent the analysis to Chicago, and they said it was Hodgkin's disease and that I wouldn't live past 5. So they were either wrong or I'm a miracle. I don't know which. When I was 3, I was too young to pedal a bicycle, and the doctors had said to give me as much sunshine as possible. So he bought me this old buckskin horse that was very old, and I lived on him. I didn't have a saddle. My folks didn't know you needed a saddle or anything, so I lived on that old horse, and I went through everybody's yard and alley in Okemah, I guess. And one woman called my dad and said, "That baby went by here on that horse and she's laying up there asleep." And my dad said, "That's all right, if she falls off, he'll stop." So I grew up on that horse. And when he passed away, I cried and screamed and hollered till my dad bought me another one. Which he still didn't know anything about horses, and it was a 2-year-old and it wasn't broke. I could saddle it and get on it. I had a saddle then, and I could get on her, but every time I'd start out on her, she'd run away with me. And so after 3 or 4 times of that, I told my dad, I said, I'm scared to get on her. I can't control her. And he said, "Well, just get on her and show her who's boss." So the next time I got on her and she started running away with me, I started spanking her and kicking her and making her run as hard as she'd go, as far as she'd go. And when she run out, she didn't do it anymore.
How old were you then?
5.
That's a lot of sense to figure that out when you're 5 years old, for goodness sakes.
Well, I had to figure out most of my life by myself. We had a roundup club that used to rope calves every Sunday afternoon, and it cost 50 cents to rope a calf. And so I would pay 50 cents and chase the calf. I tell you, that little old horse could follow a calf better than anything you ever saw. And then one day, one of the local cowboys put a rope in my hand, and he said, "Here, if you're going to chase it, you might as well learn to rope it." So that's where I learned to rope. And then I bought, as I got a little older, I think probably 12 or 13, we bought a little bit better horse, and I went around to the local clubs and roped, and somebody asked me one day why I didn't run barrels, and I didn't even know what that was. And I was still riding the mare that used to run away with me. I was still riding her at the time. And I had my dad had a cousin that lived in Greenwood, Arkansas, and he had asked us to come down to their pioneer days. So we borrowed an old homemade trailer, and my dad, he'd never had pulled a trailer before, but anyway, here we went down to Greenwood, Arkansas. And this sounds like something I made up, but I swear it's the truth. There was 36 barrel racers, and I was the last one. And I sat there and watched every one of them. And when it come my time, I did what the rest of them did, and I won first. And that started my barrel racing. Anything connected with a horse was for me. Well, when I was 16, I went to Harrison, Nebraska to a junior finals. And the school frowned on it a lot.
Oh, no.
And my folks talked to them, and I talked to them, and they said, nope, if you go, you won't pass. Well, I went, and I didn't pass that 6 weeks. And I saw that guy, that principal, years later, and he said, you know, I was always for you. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. I graduated in 1955, and I hit the American Junior Rodeo Association circuits. I didn't have a good enough horse to win very much, but I tried. And then I bought another horse and did a little bit better. But I owe all of my horse success to my great gelding, V. Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
He was a great horse. He won every halter class that there was practically. He has won many, many well, everything I won was on him. He was just a great horse. I roped on him, I run barrels on him, I showed him at haltering and reining, and you name it. He did it, and he did it all well. The first time I saw him, I laid awake and cried at night, wishing I had him, because at that time he was everything better than anything I'd ever seen. And of course I talked to the guy. I knew the guy that owned him, and I talked to him a lot, and he knew how I felt about the horse. And I don't know what happened, but one day he called me and asked me if I wanted to buy him. And I asked him how much he wanted for him, and he said, well, how much you got? And I said, well, I don't have very much cash, but I have a whole pasture full of horses I'll trade for him. So he brought him down, and I paid him some cash and swapped him a couple of horses for him. And I don't know, I guess the good Lord intervenes, all I can figure out. Most of the other stuff I did, we had all girl rodeos way back in the 50s. And professionally, it was in the rodeos, it was just barrel racing. Mm-hmm. The places that I went that had horse shows, I did other things in. Mm-hmm. And I was driving myself, taking care of myself, my car, my horse, and everything. I didn't have anyone to help me. It was all me. And at the all-girl rodeos, I, believe it or not, rode broncs, bareback broncs, for a few times, not a whole lot. I didn't ride bulls because I was afraid one of them would step on my foot. I calf roped, ribbon roped, double mugged, team roped. I was a heeler in team roping. And one buckles in most all of it. Mm-hmm. I had been running barrels a long time in the juniors, and around close to where I lived. And I'd been through several horses. And I traded for a horse named Crosby that he wasn't a barrel horse, he was a roping horse, but he run the barrels quite well, and I won some on him. Right. But after I got Sandy, it was all business. It wasn't easy. He thought he had a new rider on him and he could do what he wanted. And believe it or not, I went to Burwell, Nebraska, and I was at the end of my rope with him. And I got up at 4 o'clock one morning and went out and rode him until it started getting a little bit light, and I set the barrels up. And he and I had a little conversation that lasted until rodeo time, which was like 2 o'clock the afternoon. And so he straightened up for a while and did well, and I really shouldn't tell people how bad I had to treat a horse once in a while, but he would not do anything because he wanted to. He did it because he had to. Mm-hmm. And the final straw was at Tulsa, where he came from, and people that knew him was all watching. And at the John Lee Will Stampede, it was a small arena. And the first day I went out, and he turned off on the first barrel, turned the other way. And I hollered at him, and I guess it scared him to death because he went back around the barrels and he did the other two really fast. And I was only, you know, like a half a second or less out of the money by him doing his little deal on the first barrel. And I took him back in that room that they had us to wait in, and I got off of him, and I had my bat in my hand, and I turned around and I hit him right between the ears and dropped him. I was very mad. And he looked up at me and blinked his eyes, and he started to get up, and I did the same thing, dropped him again. And I just turned around and walked off and left him. I didn't care if I ever saw him again or not. And when I got to the car, my mom and dad was out there waiting on me, and my dad said, "Where's Sandy?" And I said, "I don't know and I don't care." And so he went to the arena and found him and brought him and put him in the, unsaddled him and put him in the trailer. And when we got home, I yanked him out of that trailer and kicked him in the rear and called him a few choice names and told him I didn't ever want to see him again. And I never had any more trouble with him. Mm. I think I finally convinced him. It wasn't easy. I worked for it. I put my horse up and I went to bed that night. And the next morning when I woke up, it was like 10 below zero, snowing. Oh, it was miserably cold. I had to go buy some clothes to put on. I didn't have any warm clothes. And when I went out to get my horse, well, the other girls had husbands that was exercising their horse and taking care of the horse for them. I didn't, and I nearly froze to death. And I told my horse before we went to run barrels, I says, "If you pull anything today, I'll kill you." And he made 2 go-arounds, 2 perfect runs. Mm-hmm. I remember growing up, I wanted a belt buckle more than I wanted anything in my life. And the first one I won at the junior rodeo, I remember telling my dad that if I had a choice between that buckle and a new Cadillac, I'd take the buckle. That's how bad I wanted one. After the first one, they came easy, but that first one was hard to get. Mm-hmm. Oh, it didn't pay much. I don't remember the exact amount. I know that I had to win a lot to win $15,000 a year. Mm-hmm. But gas was 19 to 22 cents a gallon. You could spend a night in a motel for $10. Mm-hmm. I was at Denver at this huge coliseum, and I was out there early one morning, exercising my horse, and there wasn't anyone else in there. And, you know, anything said very loud just vibrated in that building. And all of a sudden, this girl that was a competitor of mine, I heard her holler, "Jane Mayo, you Okie SOB, what are you doing here?" I'll never forget that. So that was the opinion most of them had, I think. Mm-hmm. But if I found out they were going somewhere, I'd load up and go right behind them. I couldn't wait. Mm-hmm. I loved winning.
Oh, yeah. Right.
I drove like 70,000 miles a year, usually an Oldsmobile. That was before pickups and all the things that they have today. And there wasn't all that much traffic on the roads. I never worried about anybody causing trouble. And if you had a flat and somebody stopped and helped me, I never worried about it. Everybody was nice and friendly then, seemed like. But in '61, Miss Rodeo America was from Pueblo, and she flew to Amarillo, and I picked her up at the airport, and she went with me because she had to make an appearance out there too. And I was treated very nice, and same results. Oh, I always felt unbeatable.
Really?
Yeah. I got beat some, but I figured whatever they could do, I could do better because I had the horse. Yeah, I wouldn't have won much without him. I retired and started holding barrel racing schools and training horses. And buying, training, and selling barrel racing horses to girls and their parents. The barrel racing schools, I had 2 sessions a year, and I'd have 30, 35 girls and their horses at each session. And each session was 2 weeks at our place in Okemah. Well, it's outside of Okemah, but in that area. I would watch to see what the girls knew and what their horses knew in the arena, and then we'd start from there, training, helping them and helping their horse. I had students all the way from 9 to 59. Most of them found boys and cars and quit horses. A lot of them did. But yes, I had some girls that won in their local areas, local states. One girl I sold a horse to, she wasn't at my school, but I sold her a horse that won the Colorado State Championship. I moved to Wichita Falls, well, to Henrietta, Texas, and I held some of my schools there, and I called it my home for wayward barrel racers because there was always a bunch of them bringing their horses and staying. And some of them, if they didn't have anywhere else to go, they'd come live with me. So I raised a lot of kids.
Do you remember the last time you competed? You did it sort of
in barrel racing?
Yeah, was it sort of gradually you did less and less, or?
No, it was at Santa Maria at the last finals.
Oh, really?
I took my horse home, and he deserved, if anything, that was one reason I quit. He deserved a rest because he had been a marvelous specimen for a long time. And I got to feeling sorry for him, hauling him around so much. His mother was a Burt mare, and his father was Oklahoma Star Jr. He had a 3/4 sister that Benny and Willard Combs used for dogging. What happened to my horse was very sad to me. He acted like he wasn't feeling good one night, and I called the vet that I usually use. And when he got there, he just walked up to him and gave him a shot before he said anything. And in a few minutes, my horse dropped dead. He told me what it was, and I asked other vets about it, and they said, well, they would never use it because sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And obviously it must have stopped his heart. And I had him buried there where there was one little hill there that he liked to stand on and look around, and I buried him there.
That's nice.
Bob Gray from the Cordova Cooperation called me, and they were doing books on different things that involved horses, and I don't know about other animals. And he wanted to know if I'd be willing to do one on barrel racing. And I said, sure, but I'm traveling all the time. And he said, that's all right, I'll find you. So he showed up every once in a while, and we set a time that I was going to be home for like a week. And so he came to my home with a tape recorder, and he asked me 1,000,001 questions. And like we're doing now, one thing would lead to a story, another thing, and he took all that down. And then I guess maybe a year, close to a year later, I was at Memphis, and he called me and asked me if I'd fly to Dallas and meet him at a certain time one afternoon, that he needed the final things done to go to print. So I got on an airplane one morning and flew to Dallas, and we went over all of that and what changes I wanted to make and everything. And so then the book came out, and they printed 10,000, or I understand that he printed 10,000 copies, and then I understand he printed 10,000 more. Amazon still has the book. I have 2 friends that have both ordered the book from Amazon. Well, it's just like, you know, if you're driving right or wrong, or walking right or wrong, or sleeping right or wrong, it's just as much time as I spent on a horse, it was just natural. Mm-hmm. And I could get on a horse and tell right away what he needed. Mm-hmm. They didn't always listen, but the worst horses I ever tried to work with were kid ponies. Mm-hmm. That kids had been riding, little kids. Mm-hmm. They were spoiled, and they wanted to do what they wanted to do, and they would not listen. Mm-hmm. And I even had one try to rub me off on the fence one time. But, and I had some horses. I had one man, this is a story in itself. I knew this guy vaguely. And he called and said that he had bought a horse from the track that had been running on the track, and he didn't know if we'd run barrels or not, but would I take him and try him? I told him that I would, so he brought the horse up and left. Well, every time I'd get on the horse and start toward the arena, he would just go crazy. I mean crazy. He kept, one time he reared up with me, and I stepped off of him and jerked him over backwards. That's how far I'd gone with him. And so after 2 months, I think, the guy called, and I told him, I said, this horse just isn't going to do it. I said, he just goes crazy when I try to get to the arena on him. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I was afraid of that. I'll come pick him up. Well, he came and got the horse, and I'm not certain about the timing, but I think it was on his way home. He stopped and picked up a couple of guys that was hitchhiking, and they blamed him for 2 murders that they had just done, and he got sent to the pen. Oh, boy. You might have seen the movie. Clint Black played him in a movie about it. And with his knowledge of horses, he finally got to work with the livestock at the penitentiary, and finally these 2 guys, I guess they got sent to the pen for something, and they told somebody they was in jail with that they had framed this guy, and anyway, it got straightened out, and he was released. Oh, wow. And the guy, it was the nicest guy you ever saw. Mm-hmm. He was just a prince of a fella. Mm-hmm. I hate that happened to him. Yeah. I went coast to coast, border to border, even went to Winnipeg, Canada. Mm-hmm. I like to go to Lake Charles, Louisiana. It was always nice, friendly. Most of them I was just in and out. I had to hurry to get to another one. I've even slept in another stall or beside my car because I didn't have time to go get a room and go somewhere else. Very hectic.
So
drive all night. I'd leave after the barrel race and drive all night to get to another one. Well, I had a lot of girls in my schools ask me what it took to be a champion, and my answer was like to drive. And it's truth. My daughter, I did not want to do that. I did not want her to do that because it's a hard life. You live out of a suitcase, you sleep in motels. Usually you don't have time to go in a restaurant. You usually pull through a drive-in and get you a burger or something. That's what you live on. And it's a hard life. But I wouldn't have traded it for anything. Wished I could do it again. Well, my family life was rocky for a while until I met my last husband. And it was a wonderful life with him. He was good to me, very good to me. I don't go to many rodeos because I don't know anybody anymore. You know, everybody that I rodeoed with is either dead or old as I am or older. I had a lot of experiences that I remember one night they was having a party at I think it was at Santa Maria. I looked around the room and I seen this guy I knew, vaguely knew, sitting off in a corner on the floor. And I went over there and slid down beside him and on the floor beside him, and I said, "What are you doing sitting over here by yourself?" And he started singing to me. I think he'd had a little too much to drink. The next morning he was going home and he got on a plane and it crashed. You probably remember when that plane went, I think it was in Iowa, went in the cornfield.
Oh, yeah.
He was on that plane going home. Bill Linderman was his name. And I know there's a lot more better horses now than there was back when I was. And the girls seem to be very capable. And I could pick out the winners by watching them on TV, the horses that I would want myself, which is one or two each time I've watched. But they have a knack of turning the barrels that the other horses don't have.
When they called you about being inducted, what'd you think about that? What's that mean to you?
I was thrilled. My first thought was, this is the best way to end my life. I could write 2 or 3 books on experiences that I've had.
Yeah.
Most of them really good, and the people that I've met. Clint Eastwood, when he was with Rawhide, I drove from Iowa to Sikeston, Missouri through Hurricane Carla. And it stopped raining when I got to the city limits of Sikeston. And Rawhide Bunch was there. And another girl was with me, and we checked into a room, and here come Clint, little old, just a young boy then, and Sheb Woolley were together. And Clint just walks through the door and plops down on the bed on his stomach and never said a word, but Sheb talked. And Joanne, the girl that was with me, her horse had gotten sick, and after a little bit, of course I didn't know them from Adam, wasn't really impressed with them, and I told them, I said, we've got to go check on her horse. Y'all want to go? And they said, nope, he jumped up and out they went. But there's just so many people that I've met and remembered and experiences that I've had.